Yeah, like it's pressed on it, and then it flows back in, and what happens then?
Yeah, it's a combination. When you squeeze like this, it sends the lymph moving along, circulates the lymph. And then because of that, there's more room and more circulation comes in. It's when you take and wring out and move along fluids. So then there's better circulation afterwards. You're moving along the lactic acid and the carbon dioxide that's built up in the tissue itself, getting better circulation afterwards. Both through the lymph system and through the veins. Those two systems are working. A combination. It's real important with the backward bends to be very careful, of course, of anyone who's had back problems, because you're shortening the space between the vertebrae when you do backward bending poses. So if anyone has a disc problem and the disc is a little bit out of place, it'll pinch the nerves and it could slip a disc. So you don't want to do these fast. You want to come up into the poses very slowly, very cautiously. And anybody who's had a history of back problems should be especially careful. They could do them if it doesn't cause any pain and if they do it very slowly, because he's doing a more advanced variation just for your own information and inspiration. But you wouldn't do this with your students in the beginning. You want to just have them come up very slowly and then come up slowly. So there's another variation. Do you know how to do that? Of putting your feet down by your side when you do that? And just take hold of your feet and press them down by your side. This is a good one for women to do as a variation. Because it opens up the pelvis and relaxes the pelvis muscles. So now we'll do some forward bending. And of course, what we're doing here is opening the spaces between the vertebrae. And this is very important, especially for the lower back, which controls, again, the rectal area and lower bowel. So this is very useful to opening up the lower part of digestion, preventing constipation and so forth. This Janu Sirsasana is especially important from the point of view of the parasympathetic nervous system. If you see in this chart, you'll see that the yellow is sympathetic and green is parasympathetic. Where it comes out from the spine, the sympathetic comes out between here and here. And sympathetic is the nervous system that's in charge of dilating the pupils and constricting the muscles and getting you all alert. Whereas parasympathetic, which comes out from the very lower part of the spine and the upper part of the neck, is responsible for the organs that and the action of the organs, that's relaxation. So Janu Sirsasana, or forward bend, will open up and stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system to relax the body more. Can you do it in lotus? In bound lotus, can you do it? That's a variation for people who can do the bound lotus. It gives you a little more, again, forward bending and relaxation. And it's important to pull forward on the foot. The tendency is to let the foot drop down a little bit. If you really pull forward toward you on the foot, it gives much more of a stretch to the lower part of the buttocks, which is very important. What I'll do is I'll pass around this chart on parasympathetic and sympathetic, and you can sort of see by looking at the organs exactly what's going on. But basically the idea of alertness and tenseness is sympathetic, and parasympathetic is relaxation. It's good to hold the half forward bend and full forward bend for about 3 minutes. If you can hold it that long, you really get into a state of ecstasy. It's great because, again, you're working on the sacrum, sacred. Why these things were named the way they are, there is a reason. This is the sacred area which holds the Kundalini force. And of course it's not good for us to try to awaken it, but just to allow the channels to be opened as they are. But just to encourage the flexibility and just pave the way for this awakening. The forward bends are really important in that process, and they can open the sacred area of the spine.
Why did they tell us in our class that we practiced that we should only hold the forward bend for a minute, or else it could cause constipation instead of getting rid of it?
Well, they say a minute for beginners. Yeah.
Otherwise you can do it.
Otherwise you can do it. Yeah. It creates heat in the lower spine because you're pulling on it, and that creates heat, the pulling, the friction. And that heat can dry up the lower part of the bowel, and you get more constipation because you got dried up bowel.
Better, you find that your bowels move better, then it's okay to do it.
That's a good sort of way to approach things. There's a tortoise pose, which is the most full forward bending. And you can see that that's really a full forward bend. And it works on a little bit different aspect of the pelvis than the other one. That's great. Now we're going to plow pose. According to Yogi Bhajan, plow is really one of the most key poses of the asanas. And I was interested to hear that because he said that the 2 or 3 minutes of plow pose is worth most of the other postures combined. Mainly because, again, it's working on that very important area of the upper back and neck, which are really critical. It's stimulating the thyroid because you're giving it a physical massage. It's also drawing more circulation to the thyroid and to the brain. And the knees alongside the head variation, this is a really good one to do for a length of time. If you can hold this for 3 to 5 minutes, it really does have a profound effect on the body because it's opening the pelvis, it's working on the upper spine, it's really working on all parts of the body at once. So even though it seems deceptively simple, plow, it's simple, yet it's very profound and deep in its work. And we tend to set it aside because shoulder stand is more dramatic, and this is too simple. It's too easy, but yet it's very profound. And then shoulder stand. And shoulder stand has so many beneficial effects. According to one book on yoga therapy, which I was reading, it talked about the minimum time for shoulder stand was 15 minutes to get the full benefit. But anyway, working up to as long as it's comfortable. It's draining the lymph, and we talked about the importance of the lymph as the sewage system of the body, or the gutters. So it's draining, and the lymph drains back into the bloodstream underneath the left clavicle here. There's a constant passage of lymph back into the bloodstream. And there's a doctor from Detroit, a chiropractor named Dr. Goodhart, nice name, who developed the muscle testing techniques. And what he's found is by listening with a Doppler, or that's a special stethoscope that amplifies sounds, he can hear that people who have problems have the flow of their lymph is impeded, and it sounds like. Whereas once he goes through some manipulations chiropractically to loosen up the flow of lymph back into the vein, it just goes. And there's much better flow that way. So the lymph gets drained. The abdominal organs, which are ordinarily pulled by gravity and by the way we sit in one direction, so the underside of the liver, spleen, and so forth don't get as much circulation. By turning the body upside down, you get that underside. Much better circulation. This is more space. Any gas pockets that have collected, any diverticuli full of stuff, are getting massaged in the opposite direction, so food moves along much more smoothly. It's good for constipation to hold shoulder stand for a while. It gets things moving.
What's the difference in benefits of the supported and unsupported shoulder stand?
Well, there is one additional benefit which you get from studying chiropractic, and that is when you do the unsupported shoulder stand. By drawing the arm forward like this, you're freeing up this area of circulation between the lymph and where it goes back into the bloodstream. And then the lymph is drawn into the bloodstream. This is how much fat we have circulating in the blood because the lymph is full of fat and debris and so forth. This is a very important complex relationship between how much gets drawn into the blood. So the other effect is, of course, a massage to the thyroid and drawing blood to the thyroid and to the pituitary and pineal and to the brain. Or it's felt holding shoulder stand improves memory because the more oxygen and blood supply we have to the brain, the better the brain functions. And in fact, shoulder stand is called the yogi's cup of coffee because we don't recommend coffee because it strains the adrenal glands. Every time you drink 1 cup of coffee, 3 times as much adrenaline pours into the bloodstream. And it's why we feel alert, active, and so forth when we drink a cup of coffee. But then 4 or 6 hours later, everything's wiped out. And so rather than, if you get to between 2 points quicker by going like this or by going like this, it's better to, rather than having a day that goes like this, to have one that stays nice and steady and doesn't put the body through that extra strain. Whereas shoulder stand done drains the lymph, circulation is much better, prevents the problems of old age with poor circulation to the legs and so forth, prevents the development of varicose veins or circulation problems, and creates a great alertness because there's more blood supply to the brain. Question?
It always looked to me, and felt like it would be, as though it would be cutting the circulation to the head in that position. I mean, it sort of have a crimping effect there between, that's not happening?
Well, if you can see, his face is getting a little red. And what's happening is that there's more pressure because of gravity, more pressure for the blood to stay in this area.
Is that partly what gives that massage to the thyroid?
Well, it's a positional massage, too. And there's some pressure from it.
Of the blood pumping through?
Yes. The heat, there's a sensation of heat, too. There's more heat in that area. So more, the cellular metabolism is raised, too. Then one wants to compensate by stretching the thyroid in the opposite direction and stretching the neck in the opposite direction. So, fish. And once you get that down, then full fish, which is really a nice pose. It's working on the entire spine as well as the neck.
Why during both of the poses, it's not good for people with high blood pressure, especially fish? I don't understand.
Oh, because there's a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
And
In the neck and the head.
in the neck and head, yes. And these people have a tendency toward fragile blood vessels in the brain, particularly in the innermost part of the brain, the lacunes, they're called. They're more fragile in people with high blood pressure, so you don't want to put any extra pressure on that area. And this position is not recommended for very old people, fish pose, because if they have poor circulation in these blood vessels, the carotids, they may be getting a lot of their circulation through the blood vessels in the back of the brain, the vertebrals. And so if they stretch this way and they're pinching the vertebrals, they may black out. So always with very older people, say over 60 or 70, you want to start very carefully with fish. Just have them do just a little bit stretching back, and that's it. And even you could have them put a pillow underneath the shoulders and just drop the head back so it's not pinching then. There's no strain or stretching. So, yoga's so deceptively simple. We've bent the spine forward, backward, and now side to side. Five minutes. You got it. Half spinal twist, you can watch what it's doing to the kidneys and adrenals. So for those people who have kidney adrenal problems, which includes most all of us, because in Chinese medicine, the kidneys and adrenals represent anxiety and tension, this is a great pose. And you can hold it about 5 minutes. Work up slowly. Can you do full spinal twist? Full spinal twist. First doing the lotus and then reaching around through and back. This is full spinal twist. It's just the lotus. First the lotus and then stretching around.
And that was just secondly.
Okay. So next, peacock. We can go through the last few quickly. The other representations from Chinese medicine, liver is anger, biliousness, a bilious person, anger. And the spleen is sadness or melancholy. And even if you look at the spleen, it's sort of sad, it's sort of maroon color, it's sort of so now we get a chance to really stimulate the liver and spleen with the peacock. And this is the most difficult way to do peacock, as he's doing. This is much easier because you don't have to balance as much. When you do the peacock in full lotus, it's much easier. When you come all the way up, which you know how to do that? Stretch your legs out again and then pull them all the way up like a peacock. Just keep going up. That's easier because you don't have to balance. It's more difficult to hold the balance than it is to come all the way up. What's this doing, as you can see very nicely on his stomach there, is giving a great massage with the elbows deep into the pit of the stomach, the spleen, the liver, the digestive tract. It's very good to do the peacock, even if you can't balance it. And the peacock is really much more simple. Anybody here can't do peacock? Really, it's just a question of balance. That's all it is. It's not difficult. It's not strength. If you go through it one more time. Even on the wrists, it's a question of when you hit the right balance, just like headstand when you learn it. Stretching all the way out. Anybody could do this. Whoops, don't lift up your head. And then it's a matter of just sort of pushing forward a little bit. And this pushing forward, then the feet just lift up automatically. So it's a question of just having someone work with you a little bit. You can all do peacock by the time you leave. Okay. It's recommended after doing the peacock to then do the Nauli because you've sort of stimulated and gotten things moving. So you can go ahead and do the Nauli. There's two ways of doing it. I'll show you. Simply, first just stomach lift. And watch how nicely it's affecting his liver and spleen, stomach, pancreas, bile area. Really wonderfully effective. Very beautiful. Very important. Just simply lifting. And then lifting and flapping. You can even hear things moving along. Great for digestion, but very important for liver function too. And then the stomach rolls. And this is easier than it looks. It's isolating the recti muscles and letting them roll. And it really gives a great circulation to the digestive tract.
How long and how many repetitions?
However is comfortable, as many as you can do comfortably. And then there's another way to do it, which is not to breathe out first, to take a little in-breath and lean over, and then do the flapping up and down. And this is called Agnisara. There's a lot more heat in doing it this way than if you expel the air first. And you can't do it too many times, but a lot of heat, especially in the liver and spleen area. So really great for liver and spleen. That's a really good one. And you can all learn how to do the stomach rolls too. It looks not so easy. It's easiest to learn if you've been fasting, because then there's not so much in there, so it becomes more clear which is muscle and which is undigested food. So to have someone start off in the morning on an empty stomach, have someone work with you, you should all be able to learn that too. So finally we'll do headstand, I guess. Got 2 minutes left. And headstand incorporates all the benefits of shoulder stand, plus it's stimulating the higher centers, particularly the Sahasrara, the highest center. Some people have these Porta Yoga stools where you support yourself on your shoulders, and they're fine as far as the other benefits, but the benefit of strengthening the neck muscles and of stimulating the crown chakra you get only from headstand. So it's good to learn headstand. And it's really, again, a question of balance. It's just a question of working with and reaching this point. And once you learn this point, you can just pick up the feet. Oh, he's cheating. Do it the regular way, Satya. Okay, yeah, that's the regular way. That way you learn how to balance first, and then you straighten up the feet. And he's bringing circulation to the head, memory. It's good to work up to 15 minutes in headstand, once, or especially beneficial twice a day. And if you reach the balance point, you can hold it very easily. No strain. No strain on the head or arms or neck or anything. It's just a question of balance point. It's easier when you've been fasting, again, to learn how to do headstand. And it does help in your sense of happiness, too, because I remember one New Year's Eve, it was New Year's Eve, and I was feeling a little discouraged, resolutions were going through my mind. So I decided I would do headstand exactly at midnight. So about 5 minutes before I started doing headstand, by the time I came down, after the bells rang and everything, 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, I felt completely renewed, so I made it a yearly tradition. So for the last 4 years, every midnight, New Year's Eve, I've been doing headstand. It's a great way to start out the year. And it really does clear up melancholy. It's a good cure for depression. So just to conclude by saying a word or two about deep relaxation and pranayama, and then meditation. Really, the Hatha Yoga, we get interested in and feel good about Hatha Yoga, but Hatha Yoga is just the introduction till we get to the point where we can do the pranayama. And then the pranayama is the introduction to the meditation. Because now that the body is completely relaxed, then we can use the mind. And it's not till the body is completely relaxed, and he's doing the quick version, deep relaxation. And what this is doing is stimulating, again, the lymph to flow, to clear out the old, and to then the new comes in much more easily. And any tension, any muscles that have been caught up in being tense in certain positions can then be freed up of this tension. After one has done the full deep relaxation, it's a good time to send the mind to various areas of the body to heal them. Because again, as we can